you know, when it's illegal, I have to say that I love the name of the event. It's been so many events about temporary workers programs and this debate about the moratorium across the country, but this name is the best one, and I just had to say, you guys, what the fuck? Yeah, so, okay, about the swap workers, I'm going to describe a little bit the conditions of the farm workers. But I'm also going to describe the conditions of the workers under the agricultural stream of the national occupations, NOXI and D. That's the big name of the government. Because when we go into the farms, you have workers that are under the agricultural stream, and then you have the workers from the SOAP, and then you have undocumented workers, and then you have refugees. So it is all like a mix of different people with different status, which I think Tracy maybe is going to address that, the artificial division of the categories, that in general all these workers with precarious status under different programs are all equally exploited. So as David already mentioned a little bit of the background of the Seasonal Agricultural Workers Program, it is one of the oldest programs along with the LCP. I think the LCP is even older. But this one was in 1966 in the east part of the country, and yet it still is the temporary workers program, right? We can already start to debunking some myths about these programs. It's like 48 years of presence of Mexican and Caribbean workers in this country, and yet still we know very little about them. And in the West, we got the SOAP in 2004, and the agricultural stream that is bringing mostly Guatemalans, Hondurans, Thai workers, you name it. Now it's from all over Indonesia. And so it's, we can see in the agricultural sector the further and further the neoliberalization of the immigration policies through the temporary workers programs. But talking about the SOAP, we often think on this program as a result of neoliberal policies. But when we think in agriculture especially, it's very important to go beyond that analysis and say it's not actually a result of the heightened of neoliberal policies. It is actually the reminiscence of something that we know has built the entire history of this country, which is colonialism and slavery, right? So we see, especially with the agricultural program, the reminiscence of many of the components of what we can call unfree labor. And even workers and employers themselves, when they talk and when they refer to their workers with their labor force, they refer in terms that resembles or make descriptions, allusions to slavery, and the same the workers. When we go to the farms, the workers, when they describe their living conditions, they describe themselves as basically living under a fear regime and under an open jail. I'm quoting some workers, and they say, even though Canada has this, like, make you feel that you are in a big farm, open air, a big, huge territory of land, you feel caged, and you feel that you very much don't have any freedom. And when I talk about an unfree labor, and then I'm going to be starting to talk about anecdotal experiences that we see on the ground, but when we talk unfree, I want you to think in two senses. One, unfree in the sense that these workers are unfree to sell their labor, right? They come and to work only under one single employer, one single farm, and they are not able to change employers if the conditions in the farms are bad. The same for the workers under the other agricultural stream of the NOXI and D. But also unfree in the sense that their social, cultural, and political rights are completely denied. So even like some basic things, like for example, workers are so what we call the conditions of deportability. They are risking deportations if they complain, if they do not agree with certain rules of the employer or rules of the farm, but also if they fall sick, if they get injured, because what is easily is like you have to think that for employers and for Mexican consular officials, they see these workers as a disposable, displaceable, easily discardable labor force. Even though in paper says that the workers have protections under labor legislation, in practice, the access to get protections is really denied. There is no really much access to justice to these workers and to farm workers. And when we talk about SOAP, it's important to always think that these workers are completely like living in a completely two-tier different regime. And when I talk about a different regime, I want you to think in history back. Let's think about 100 years ago. Farm workers today, from the SOAP and from the NOC C&D, are coming in the exact same conditions than Chinese workers came to build the railroad from coast to coast. So I think it is important to really start questioning the language and the words that we use to describe migrant labor regimes, when really these migrant labor regimes have been repackaged and completely sophisticated in a way that 100 years ago, it was basically conditions of labor apartheid, where Chinese workers had no really, were not allowed to mix with other populations. They came here just to work. Once they finish their work, thank you, go back home. And workers, Mexican workers, Guatemalan workers, are coming in the exact same conditions. Yet, we see these programs as very benevolent programs that Canadians, the Canadian economy is granting these workers from the third world. So really there is not much time to talk, but I want you to leave, let's think agriculture is one of the most exploitative industries. When we think about really long hours, no holidays, no overtime, these workers in theory are covered by work safe and health and safety measures. However, monitoring is very lax. Our provincial employment standards are weak, and there is no much reinforcement. David can talk a lot about that. But really, I think for me, more than talking about the conditions of the exploitations of the workers, let's look at why and what are the elements that allow to continue to perpetuating these conditions of extreme exploitation that are from 100 years ago. In the 70s, there was an amazing struggle by the South Asian population of farm workers. Things changed a little bit. Changed a little bit after like really, really hard battles, and then were rolled back. So there is a reason. It's not an accidental that agriculture remains to be one of the most exploitative industries. And I think maybe this isn't the part of the solution, but I think really to start thinking of solutions, we need to really start using new language. And so I want you to leave thinking that the workers in the agricultural stream are really in a different system. And when we talk about labor apartheid, workers in the agricultural stream and in the SOAP program, they live in a completely labor apartheid, because all the laws and protections that are granted to Canadians or people with permanent residency or citizenship are not the same for these workers. The conditions of the disposability, displaceability, and deportability is a constant fear for these workers, that they live with this. And even if this is just a perceived fear, the fact that they have to live with this in their heads constantly, all the time, it makes these workers living in a labor apartheid. And we can talk more about, because language is very, very powerful, but I think I'm already in my 7 minutes.